Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be going over our first range of the top 30 prospect list. So we're going to do 21 through 30 today. I'm going to go through all these tomorrow. We're going to do 11 through 20. And then next Monday, we're going to do our top 10. I'll post our list in the comments as well. So that'll be the pinned comment. But without further ado, Chase, you want to go through this list real quick?
Yeah, and so we're going to start off right here at number 30. He's not on any list that I've seen so far outside of Prospects 1500. They have a top 50 prospects list. They have him a little bit lower. Moises Lugo. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's 23 years old, and last season he had a pretty solid year. He had a 3.19 ERA and about 90 innings pitched. 15 of those being in Double-A, where he sat around a 1.80 ERA with 3 starts. Looking forward to see what he does in Double-A. It looks like he can be great for pitching depth. He is 23 years old. So worst case scenario, he ends up being trade bait at the worst, but it looks like he'll be a depth piece probably by next year. He looks pretty good. At number 29, we have Max Ferguson. He's a second baseman. He was drafted last year. Some of you may remember him. He had an all right season. He had a bad season to debut. He hits around 214 last year. His power numbers weren't there. He didn't hit for a lot of power, struck out quite a bit. But hopefully in his second year, he bounces back now that he's used to the minor league seasons. At number 28, name that we all know, Jorge Oña. He's still coming off injury. He hasn't played that much. Looked like he was going to be part of the DH role. We'll see where he sits now. Right now, he is MLB ready. He'll probably go for an assignment and see where he's at. He'll probably be a left fielder / DH in the minor leagues, and possibly, if anyone gets hurt, he'll come up and either DH or play left field occasionally. Has a lot of power. Kind of was looking forward to see how it translated to the MLB, but unfortunately, we won't get to see that right away. And number 27, Tirso Ordonales. He is an outfielder. He hit 248, had around a 750 OPS. He started to have a bounce back season after last year. Last year. He had a bad year last year. He improved this year. Hopefully, he continues to improve. As of right now, we don't have a lot of other outfield prospects that are going to be knocking on the MLB doorsteps, and he's kind of one of them. He's 22 years old. He's a lefty. He's kind of had up and down seasons, and last year was pretty solid. So hopefully he builds off of that and, improves his stock, improves himself as a player so that he can be a part of the Padres' future, if not a stopgap for another guy. At number 26, we have Yendry Rojas. He's a shortstop out of Cuba. He's going to make his debut this year. There's no stats on him, but from what scouts say, it looks like he has really great potential to be an advanced hitter. He's going to hit for average. Hopefully he grows into his body and develops some power. There's a lot of potential there. At number 25, I know a lot of other top 30 lists have him a little bit higher. We have Reggie Lawson. The reason we have him so low is if you look at his career numbers in the minor leagues, they haven't been great. And last year, he had Tommy John surgery and started to come back and still struggled a little bit. So hopefully after this season or after this offseason, he's fully rehabbed and he's, coming to prove us wrong. Scouts love him. They think he has great stuff. Heard nothing but good things about him. We just would really love to say that, really love to see that play in the minor leagues and hopefully jump up. He's a little bit older. That's also why we have him a little bit lower. But hoping he can bounce back and be one of those guys that we thought he was going to be. At number 24, we have Ray Kerr. He was acquired this offseason. He's a lefty. Guy can throw 100 miles an hour. He has some pretty good off speed. He had a 3.18 ERA last year in between AA and AAA. He's going to be one of those guys that he either makes the roster or he doesn't, and he's going to be depth for the bullpen. He can make an impact this year at any time. So I think he's just going to start off in AAA for a little bit more seasoning and then get called up when the time is right. At number 23, Efrain Contreras. So he did not pitch last year. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's 22. He did not pitch last year because he had Tommy John. So he's been working his way back, but outside of that, he has a pretty good pitch mix. He was pretty good with his command. They were just hoping he was going to build off of it before he got injured. So hopefully this year he's going to start off in Double A. I'm hoping he makes strides because if not, he could be a big part of this future rotation. I've had a lot of high praise from him, but unfortunately he had Tommy John, so we first have to see how he recovers from that. Number 22, we talked about this guy a lot last year, Adrian Martinez. He's probably going to start off the year in AAA. He's 25 years old, has a good fastball, great slider. He did go through some pains last year in AAA, but I do think the Padres should have promoted him because he was probably going to be better than, Jake Arrieta and Vince Velasquez. That experiment went horrible, and I didn't see a reason why not to promote this guy and see what he had. It was perfect time to do so. You would have saw that you either needed more pitching depth or not going into this offseason. But he's going to start off in AAA. Hopefully he does good. He's going to be probably one of those guys that makes a spot start if anything goes wrong, or he might be a part of the rotation if anyone does get hurt. And at number 21, we have Jagger Haynes. So he was drafted in 2020. Unfortunately, a little after he got drafted, he had Tommy John, so he did not play in 2021, and he's going to be making his debut this year in 2022. However, when he was only 17 years old because he was the youngest player in that draft class. And before he had Tommy John, he was sitting around 93 to 94. He had good feel for his off-speed pitches. He could spin the ball pretty well. And the Padres were hoping as he continues to grow into his body and get older, he's going to develop some velocity and if not some more rotation on his pitches. So we'll see. A lot of potential there. Scouts love him. The Padres think they got a steal in the 5th round with him. They love him. So, they've always been good at scouting people. So hopefully this one plays out too.
Yeah, so there's a couple familiar names in here. There's Jorge Oña, there's Tirso Ornelas, there's Reggie Lawson, obviously used to be a top 10 prospect, Adrian Martinez. Jorge Oña, I think a lot of people think he's going to be like the future DH, or he could be a DH this year. I don't really see it, especially because the best power tool in our farm right now isn't him as much as people probably think it is. It's Joshua Mears. He actually has the best power tool in our whole farm system, so I'd imagine he would be the DH of the future if he does stick around. We know how AJ loves trading his prospects, and I think Matt and Chase both know I'm all for it. I'm on AJ's train, even if it hasn't panned out as much as I hoped it would. Who else is there? There's Reggie Lawson. We brought up a little bit. He's just kind of been. He just hasn't had many good years down in the minors. I still think he can be a good player, but couple Tommy Johns in. We haven't seen enough of him to really have him too high. He was the biggest faller in terms of the new MLB prospect rankings. He went from, I believe it was number 8 to number 20. So he was the biggest faller. I still think he has immense talent to, go back up there eventually, but that one's kind of just going to be a wait and see. Let's see what happens with him. Ray Kerr, a lot of people think Ray Kerr can be our closer of the future. I don't blame you guys. He throws 100 miles per hour, just needs to find his control, and I think he could be a closer type of guy too. Of course, those kind of guys aren't going to be ranked too high. Like, I don't even know how. There's a guy that we think was ranked too high that we ranked way lower than MLB.com did. But last guy I want to talk about, Adrian Martinez, had really, really good numbers in AA, struggled in AAA, and unfortunately it was at a time where we kind of thought he might get brought up. I kind of thought, okay, AAA will probably be his last test, and if he succeeds in AAA, then they'll probably bring him up for like a solid 2 starts just to try and get by, so that way they don't have to sign Jake Arrieta and Vince Velasquez. He struggled in AAA. I mean, I don't blame him at all. Didn't have anything, any crazy numbers prior to last year, or maybe he did in 2019. I forgot. But in 2021, he absolutely had some really good numbers in AA. And now I was kind of surprised he didn't get a start or two, considering I don't know if anyone remembers when Pedro Avila got a start. So I was thinking, well, if Pedro Avila got a start, then Adrian Martinez has to get a start, right? But I guess not. Maybe we'll see him this year. I think he's ready. I think he's projected to be ready, at least in terms of ETA. But I don't know. Some of these prospects are really interesting. A lot of them, I think a lot of people tend to think our farm system is a lot better than it actually is. But I don't know. That's just me.
Going off your last comment, I do like. I feel like I get kind of hyped about the farm system, but only because like the top end guys are so good. But then you look at the guys that are kind of middle tiered, and like you'll see with ours, the way that we rank them is there's a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds that we have ranked really high. So it's a lot of unproven talent, I think, Isaac. I don't know. That's just the way that I look at it. But like in terms of like guys that are like 20 to like 22, I don't think the talent's like that crazy in that kind of range outside of like the top end guys in the system. I definitely think you're right there. But when we're looking at this 21 to 30 rankings, our list, I think it's interesting because you have a handful of guys that could easily contribute this year. Adrian Martinez, I fully expect him to at least get a couple MLB starts. When we were talking about, we recently, earlier this week, we talked about this team has so much starting pitching depth. There's so much pitching depth in the minor leagues. If Mackenzie Gore starts the year in the MLB, which I think he will, I don't know. It's kind of up in the air still. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. If he does, Adrian Martinez is the first guy to come out of the minor leagues to start. He is the first starter out of the minor leagues, if that's the case. But going through the rest of it, Ray Kerr, he is going to be starting the year off in AAA, I believe, maybe AA, but I know that he was like, he's not on the roster right now. He's not going to start the year on the MLB roster. Another guy. Have a couple guys hurt, he will easily get called up. So he's another guy just kind of waiting. Jorge Oña, I hope this does not happen, but if Voit went down, he's probably the guy that gets called up, and maybe he plays that role a little bit, kind of left field, outfield, or left field DH. So he's another guy that's likely to come up. I would probably say he's the least likely of the three. But then you look into some of these other guys. Efrain Contreras, we want to see how he bounces back. Jagger Haynes has a lot of hype. He was fifth rounder in 2020. So he's got a lot of hype. A couple guys there. Moises Lugo, I didn't even know anything about him. Max Ferguson, he struggled a lot. Tirso Ornelas, he had an okay year. He's starting to get a little bit older, so I kind of wonder what's going to happen to him just because he's 22 already. He is a pretty big guy in terms of an outfielder. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, but his numbers are just like kind of meh. Like he's around like 700, 800 OPS, hits about 240, 250, just kind of across the board, just solid. But I don't think there's like a ton to be like super hyped about there. Yendry Rojas, he's a very interesting guy because we haven't really seen how he's going to look. Another guy, 17 years old. He came out of, where was it? I forget. Cuba. He came out of Cuba, 6'1", 190. Actually on MLB.com, they talk about him being similar to Yoan Moncada, but I don't know if that's, I think it's a little bit high of a praise right there. But yeah, I think that you look through this list and you see a couple guys that can contribute early on, and then you see a lot of prospects here. So, or like major projects, I guess, not prospects. So we do see some project kind of players like that, but I don't think there's a ton to get super excited about in this 21 to 30 ranking, just because a lot of times you'll have some guys in this range where it's like, hey, we don't know much about this guy, but he has ridiculous tools. When we post our episode tomorrow, the 11 to 20 range, there are a lot of guys like that. There are a lot of guys to get really excited about that we should expect to get moved into that top 10 list if they play well. And a lot of them are very young. But in this list, it's a lot of guys that just don't quite have the tools to make it up there, or they're a little bit older and they're likely to contribute somewhat soon. If I'm going to pick two guys on this list that I'm super excited for, it's going to be Adrian Martinez because he's pitched really well in the minor leagues. In AA last year, he was fantastic. He moves up to AAA, struggles for a bit, kind of regains himself, and his numbers end up being okay. Not great numbers if you look at him from a whole, but if you were following how he was performing last year in AAA, he was awful at first. His first few starts, I think he had like a 9 ERA in his first 2 or 3 starts, and he ends up kind of like being a 4 to 5 kind of ERA guy in AAA. So he's a guy that I think that you could definitely see something pan out of him this year. And then, of course, the other guy would be Reggie Lawson, because Reggie Lawson, people love him. People think he has ridiculous stuff. But the major question mark is he has just been injured so much. And so we don't really know what he's going to look like. If injuries didn't play as big of a factor as they do in some players, maybe we see him have, contribute and carve out a role for this team. But there's very likely chance that injuries have completely derailed his career, which really sucks. But I think that's all I got on these guys. Obviously, not a ton is known about some of these guys, but Chase, Isaac, anything else you guys want to add before we take off? All right, awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. So thank you guys for listening. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing our 11 to 20 rankings. Super excited about these guys. There's a few names in here. That I think that ours vastly are different from the MLB top 30 list because they have them as top 10 guys and we don't have them anywhere near that. But there's also some guys here that we've, I think, bumped up quite a bit higher just because they're younger and they're performing at a ridiculous rate in either rookie ball, A ball, whatever it is, high A. So we'll get into those guys tomorrow, but super pumped to post that one. And then on Monday, we will do our top 10 rankings. And baseball starts next Thursday, which is crazy. So we're going to have some stuff out, getting ready for the season, maybe some, best guys to have bounce back years, kind of season previews. We're probably going to do some bets, I think, for just internal bets of like, all right, if this guy hits over 20 home runs, we have to do this, cough, cough, Eric Hosmer. But yeah, we'll do that as we get closer to the start of the season. So stay tuned for that. Also, we just hit 1,600 subs today. So thank you guys again for all the support. Super awesome to see that. But with that said, have a great night. Have a great Friday, great weekend. And we'll see you guys tomorrow for our 11 through 20